Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University.
Namaskar students and learners. I, Dr. Jainee Shah, welcome you all to Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University's video lecture series. Today, we shall learn about literature and psychology, which is unit number 5 of paper number 1, that is Introduction to Literature, which is a course of first year Bachelor of Arts in English. Friends, literature and psychology both are different subjects, but they are interconnected in ways more than one. Friends, this lecture will help you to understand the relationship between literature and psychology, as well as a brief concept of psychoanalysis as a tool of literary criticism. The components that will be taken up in this session are relationship between literature and psychology, psychological criticism, Sigmund Freud's theory of psychoanalysis, concept of id, ego and superego, psychoanalytic literary criticism, and relevance of psychological theory in literature. So, let us begin. Friends, as you know from the earlier lectures that literature is considered to be a written work of artistic, superior or lasting merit. Literature is defined as writings having excellence of form or expression and expressing ideas of permanent or universal interest. You may take, for example, novels written by Charles Dickens, dramas by William Shakespeare, poetry by William Wordsworth. Friends, literature is something that has strong or profound human significance, as it is inspired out of life as well as it grows and develops out of life. So, when we read great literature or literature which has universal value, for example, dramas written by William Shakespeare such as Hamlet, Othello, King Lear, which were written in 16th and 17th century but are relevant even in today's time. So, by reading these kind of literature, we come closer to life and we come closer to the understanding of human nature. Now friends, having an idea of literature, let us know about the term psychology. Friends, psychology is the science of mind, of how the mind works in different situations. It is also a study of conscious and unconscious mind. It is also a study of feeling, emotion and human behavior. So, when we culminate all these, psychology, friends, can be defined as the study of human behavior. Now, let us come to the relation between the two, that is the relation between literature and psychology. Friends, literature has existed ever since man had language. Of course, first it existed in oral tradition and later in the form of the writing. Psychology also existed earlier. It was known to the ancient Greeks and Romans, but it was recognized as a proper branch of study in the Europe only during the 18th and 19th centuries. Literature and psychology are interlinked and interrelated because both are interested in the human mind, in the study of human mind. Psychology researches human behaviors and the causes of those behaviors, while literature depicts human behavior majorly through fiction, when an author creates the characters and dialogues in his or her work. One is a branch of arts, that is literature, and the other is a branch of social science, that is psychology, but both study human behavior, and so they are interrelated and mutually beneficial. So, having set this background, we can attempt to learn the mutual relationship that exists between literature and psychology. Friends, it is interesting to know that beside literature and psychology, there is no other branch of study which is engaged so much in the study of the relationship between human body and soul with all its complexities, contradictions and dilemmas. These branches make effort to know the mysterious aspects of the human soul and its subconscious areas by means of long and detailed journeys. To put it in a simpler form, friends, human beings are complex organisms, not only anatomy wise but with the workings of the brain as well. And psychology attempts to study the reasons behind human behaviors as they are depicted in any literary work. Friends, a theorist, Ismet Emre, gave an explanation of an importance of relationship between the two disciplines, that is literature and psychology. The first point is the application of psychological knowledge to any form of art or specifically literature provides a more precise background or a more precise language with which to discuss the creative process of producing literature. The second is that the lives of the author can also be studied as a means of understanding their art, and the third point is the actions of the characters can be explained and they can be understood better through psychology. This concept of literature and psychology basically involves the interpretation or analysis of a literary text with psychological theories and psychological approaches. So, linking these two different worlds, psychological world and literary world, a balance can take place through the study of the three branches of psychological criticism. Which are they? Psychological criticism is broadly divided into three branches, which are trauma, psychoanalytic criticism and cognitive criticism. The working of the writer's mind can be explained by the depiction of trauma in his or her works. Trauma and depiction of trauma is mostly triggered from the personal happenings of the author's life. The second approach, that is the psychoanalytic criticism, it focuses on the author and why the author wrote what he or she wrote in his work. Whereas the cognitive approach focuses on the reader and how readers' minds work while they read a piece of literary work, art. Now let us move further, friends. It is interesting to know that a direct relationship between literature and psychology came neither from writers or critics of literature but from a neurologist. Friends, a neurologist is a specialist who treats the disorders of the nerves or the nervous system. Psychiatrist, for example, Alfred Adler gave the concept of superiority and inferiority complex, whereas Carl Jung justified the use of psychology for studying literature because all thought and expression are derived from the human psyche. But most importantly, friends, a 20th century Austrian neurologist called Sigmund Freud developed the dynamic form of psychology which he called psychoanalysis. Friends, psychoanalysis is a means of analysis and therapy for mental instability, which is technically known as neurosis. But the term psychoanalysis soon expanded to account for many developments and practices in the history of human civilization, which included warfare, mythology, religion, as well as literature and other arts. Friends, I would like to share with you an anecdote, an interesting anecdote regarding Sigmund Freud. Once during a social gathering, Freud was greeted by a friend as the discoverer of the unconscious. Freud corrected the speaker saying, "The poets and the philosophers before me discovered the unconscious. What I discovered was the scientific method by which the unconscious can be studied." So, this in a way explains the effect that Freud's psychoanalytical theory has upon literature. This theory helped the writers and practitioners of the creative arts to study deeper, to probe deeper in the dramatizations of human situation. Friends, Sigmund Freud in his work Introduction to Psychoanalysis published in 1920, he created a framework, a theoretical framework for psychoanalytic criticism. This theory helps to reach the complexities of the unconscious mind. The theory works on the ground that literature and the other arts, like dreams and neurotic symptoms, consist of the imagined or fantasied fulfillment of wishes that are either denied by the reality or are prohibited by the social standards of morality and propriety. The forbidden or disallowed wishes or desires mainly include libidinal. Friends, libidinal are physical and sexual desires which come into conflict with reality and are controlled by the censor. Now, the censor is the internalized representative within each individual, that it represents the standards of society and morality into the unconscious realm of the artist's mind. But through literature, libidinal and censor are permitted to achieve a fantasized satisfaction through literary writings. Freud believed that society sublimates its channel through unconscious and creative process, but psychological material will be expressed indirectly, disguised in a mask or encoded as it happens in dreams. So, this psychological material will be expressed in literature through three main principles. These principles are, the first one is symbolism. Symbolism in literature expresses the repressed objects or emotions through disguise. The second is condensation, which is a method where several thoughts or persons are represented in a single image or entity. And the third concept is displacement, in which the substitution for an unconscious object of desire is replaced by the one that is acceptable to the conscious mind. According to Freud, in the unconscious mind of every adult individual, there exists the remaining traces of the prior stages, former stages of psychosexual development, from earliest infancy, that is from childhood to the adulthood. These get expressed in a disguised or masked form when they are triggered by some event in adult life. For example, the author's own childhood traumas, family life, sexual conflicts, fixations, emotions can be traced in the character that the author creates in his or her literary work. Moving further, friends, later on Sigmund Freud elaborated and refined his own theory with the theory of mental structures, dynamics and processes in his works, later works called New Introductory Lectures on Psychoanalysis, published in 1933, and an Outline of Psychoanalysis, published in 1939. Freud's model of the mind has three aspects or three levels. First is id. This level of the mind incorporates libidinal or sexual and other desires. It is the predominantly irrational and unknown part of our psyche or mind. Second level is the ego. The word ego means something different in psychology than the usual meaning of the word that we understand. Ego is the level of the mind which tries to negotiate the conflicts between the unsatisfied demands of the id. That is the first level. Ego is the predominantly rational, logical, orderly, conscious part of the mind. This level also represents the limited possibilities of gratification offered by the world of reality, the real world. The third level is the superego. It is the projection of the ego and seems to be outside of the self, making moral judgments. It is also the level in which the internalization of standards of morality and propriety exist. Superego basically governs the human behavior. Now, let us understand this concept of id, ego and superego with one simple example. Have a look at this image, friends. During the time of exam, the id level of your mind lures or attracts you to do partying, enjoying with friends, and superego tries to hold you back through moral judgment. It asks you to stop any kind of enjoyment, rest or relaxation. It tries to govern you, telling just study and study more because it's exam time. Whereas ego, my friends, ego balances id and superego. It makes realistic and possible goals where relaxation and studies both are balanced. These kind of dilemmas and contradictions occur in every human being's mind, and they are represented by id, ego and superego. Friends, apart from id, ego and superego, Freud also developed 3 levels of the mind called the unconscious, pre or subconscious and the unconscious, the cautious. The conscious level of the mind or current thoughts, feelings and focus live. The pre-conscious or the subconscious level is the home of everything we can recall or retrieve from our stored memory. The deepest level of the mind is the unconscious level, where there is a repository of the processes that drive our behavior, including basic, primitive and instinctual desires. So friends, id, ego and superego as well as conscious, pre or subconscious and unconscious are the psychoanalytic methods used by the authors and critics who base their analysis of literary characters on these 3. It is to Sigmund Freud's credit that he has developed a language that described and a model that explained a theory that encompassed human psychology. This has helped both critics and readers to appreciate literature on a new level. Freud believed that the unconscious and often the repressed in the life of the author has a major role to play in creative writing, for your unconscious mind often becomes the source of writing. Friends, further, some major concepts regarding the ongoing talk, that is the relationship between psychology and literature, and for a psychological study of literature must be understood. Friends, there is a term called manifest content. In literature, the purpose of creative writing is seen as a desire to gratify or to satisfy some forbidden or unfulfilled wish. So, the literal surface of this literary work is called manifest content or dream story, which your innate or hidden desires are realized through writing and portraying. Another concept is symbol, in which messages or ideas from the unconscious are presented by a substitute object, sign or signal. Symbol, apart from its literary significance, has a special and distinguished meaning in the concept of psychoanalysis. Friends, all psychoanalytic approaches to literature have one thing in common. The critic or researcher begins with a full psychological theory of how and why the characters of literary work behave as they do, with the help of a theory that has been developed by a psychologist, psychiatric, psychoanalyst who are outside of the realm of literature, and these critics apply this psychological theory as a standard to interpret and evaluate a literary work. So, this branch of psychoanalytic literary criticism works in these aspects of analysis of literature. First and foremost is the author. The psychological theory is used to analyze the author and his or her life, and the literary work produced by this author is seen to supply evidence for this analysis. This is often called psychobiography. Psychobiography, a theory which draws parallels from the author's life to analyze the literary work with the basis of psychology. The characters, friends, this theory is closely applied to the study of literature, through which the complex characters can be studied. The third is the text. This theory is used to analyze the role of language and symbolism in literary text itself. And the fourth component, friends, is the readers. The literary work is seen to embody universal human psychological processes and motivations. to which the readers respond more or less unconsciously. So basically this theory is used to explain the appeal of the literary work on the readers. Now let us see, friends, that how this psychoanalytic literary criticism helps in throwing light or illuminating a literary work, as suggested by three critiques. First one is I.A. Richards. In his work Principles of Literary Criticism, he suggests that this new field of interpretation clarifies the unconscious relations between a writer and a reader. Secondly, a critique called Edmund Wilson, he pointed out in his work called The Wound and the Bow that the study of the lives of authors helps us better understand their works of art. This means that literary biography or psychobiography is helped by psychology to speculate on the interior parts of author's life. Thirdly, as F.L. Lucas points out in his work Literature and Psychology, that psychology can be used to explain the actions and reactions of created characters. Some of their actions may seem puzzling or complexing till we are able to become a psychoanalyst who searches for the subconscious patterns which motivates a character. The best example of this theory is Ernest Jones' study of the character of Hamlet from the play Hamlet in his book Hamlet and Oedipus. He provides the answers to the puzzles of Hamlet's delay in avenging his father's murder. This topic will be taken at length in another session. By this you know now the relevance of psychology in literature. So friends, we have learnt about the relationship between literature and psychology and how psychology, psychoanalysis, psychoanalytic literary criticism and the development of Freudian psychology have made it possible to express the inner complex workings of the mind and the complexities of literary characters. So friends, you can check your self-assessment through answering the following questions based on this video lecture, and further here are some of the suggested readings, some of the links, some of the books that you can can be helpful for you. Friends, thank you for watching the video. I hope you have learnt about the concept of psychology and literature, and we will take up another session where based on this theory we are going to analyze the play Hamlet by William Shakespeare. So it will be a psychological literary study of the play Hamlet by Shakespeare. Friends, thank you for watching the video and goodbye until next time. स्वाध्यायः परमम्